Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Wednesday, the 5th of March, which makes this the news for Tuesday, March the 4th, day 1105 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, midnight Eastern European Time, here from this major European capital currently under siege. And I see that the peeps are coming in. Hey, Chef Deb. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Bernard. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, PH, Manned Bear. How you doing? You're here early. Congratulations. Integral, how do you do? Hey, Dragonfly, Richard Prexis, G2. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Bermuda. Hey, Lars. Hey, Scotty Boy. Hey, Eli, Little Red, Thomas Weber. How's everybody doing? There's Fitzy. Fitz is a longtime supporter of this channel. Hey, Nashville. Hey, Bernard. What's up, bud? And was our sponsor on Friday and Monday, but tonight it is going to be Arn. So if anybody sees Arn around, thank him for his sponsorship of this channel. It is really, hey, Betty Thompson, how you doing? Hey, Vigard. Hey, Pugga Mahone. Hey, Courtney Davis. I used to know. There's Arn. Arn is our sponsor tonight. Oh, dude, I would kill for a cheesesteak. I mean, there's just no such thing as a hoagie here. It's not a thing. Boy. Anyway. Did you see me get nostalgic for hoagies there? Especially for a cheesesteak hoagie. A venison cheesesteak hoagie on garlic bread with extra sharp New York cheddar. Wawa's no good. No. No, I don't know. How is the pizza in UK? Is it pretty good? It's dreadful here. Very hard to find a good pizza here. You see a lot of things that look like pizza, but then you eat them and they are blue cheese and pear. And you're like, what the fuck am I eating? Hey, Bjorn. Okay, hey, Mad Mike. I don't remember. I was only in London once. I don't remember getting pizza at any time we were there. We mostly went out for the national dish, curry, right? Indian. All right, so let's take a look here, guys. Starting with last night's overnight drone attacks on the territory of Ukraine, we are seeing the pattern that my buddy Dragon in the Ukrainian Armed Forces had suggested we would see. The number of drones last night, it was about half of what we saw the last week. In the last week, the Russians sent over 1,000 drones at Ukraine. Last night, we saw just 99. And of those 99, 97 were taken out, either shot down or taken out with electronic countermeasures or other active countermeasures. So it's a 97+% interception rate. Now, the world is still reeling from the cosmic realignment of powers on Earth. The reality is, and I think this is the reality that we must all grapple with, Moscow and the DC are now aligned. Zelensky did not sign anything. Both the Ukrainian Rada, the parliament here, and the president have expressed that they are in fact ready to sign the rare earths mineral deal, which I thought was funny. You know, in that fiasco on Friday, Trump referred to it as the raw earths deal a dozen times or more. And I sat there cringing every time. And then I thought to myself, gosh, you know, maybe the Ukrainians could take advantage of this ignorance and draw up a raw earths deal that gave them credit to all the horse manure and cow manure they wanted, without ever touching the rare earths deal, right? So we saw the world is waking up to the threat that Donald Trump is, not just to America, but to the world. And we saw the emergency meeting of European powers on Sunday and then again on Monday in London with a dozen EU heads of state, plus EU officials, plus Canada and Turkey there, all talking about Ukraine and Ukraine security. Unfortunately, these guys, now look, you have to understand it, right? There is not a European leader alive. There is no one in this live right now. Hey, Chris Carter. Hey, Cynthia, how you doing? There is nobody alive right now that lived in a world where the United States security guarantees for Europe did not exist. There is nobody alive right now that did not live in a world where the U.S. nuclear umbrella protected Europe. We have to face the facts that that world is gone. As long as Donald Trump, creature of the Kremlin that he is, continues to operate with no resistance inside the United States to demolish the institutions of democracy on the orders of his Kremlin handlers, we cannot count on the United States. And so it was disappointing to see this European meeting happen and so many naive comments come out of it. Keir Starmer, for example, in the Times of London wrote, Britain is pressuring Zelensky to do everything possible to restore relations with the U.S. They're making the mistake that so many Western leaders make. We think we can deal with Putin. You can't deal with Putin. Putin's a liar who will break his word every time and has an established history of doing that. Donald Trump is the same animal. He is the same animal. He is a political creature of the worst sort who is grabbing extra executive powers, extra constitutional powers, ignoring the system of checks and balances that Congress and the judiciary are supposed to impose on the executive branch in the United States. DJT is Krasnov. Make no mistake. He is following Orban's playbook for undermining the institutions of democracy and seizing power for himself. Make no mistake. So the idea, and I think that this is critically important for all of us to grasp and grasp firmly, this idea that Donald Trump is no friend to any of us. He is an enemy of everything that every rational democratic person believes. He is a threat to all of it. And he is clearly under orders from the Kremlin. In just one 90-minute phone call from Vladimir Putin, the entire political agenda in the United States, the entire foreign policy agenda, went to its polar opposite. And we saw the United States for the first time in history voting in the UN along with Belarus, North Korea, Tehran, and Moscow. Are you fucking kidding me? Now look, nobody in Russia stands with Ukraine. Okay, if you stand with Ukraine in Russia, you go to jail. So nobody in Russia stands with Ukraine. There is no movement among the Russian people to do a fucking thing about this war. The Russian people are sheep. 500 years of serfdom, followed by 80 years of the most evil experiment ever performed on humanity, Homo Sovieticus. And 30 years of the gangster Putin have resulted in an entire population of sheeple who are either sadists themselves, happy to participate in the torture, murder of Ukrainians every day, or who close their eyes to it out of a sense of self-preservation. We cannot count on the Russian people for anything. It's outrageous. Outrageous. And Starmer wasn't the only one to be talking about the need for the USA in this. The USA has its own problems, folks, and the USA is in the hands of its enemies. Donald Trump cannot be counted on for anything except infantile, offensive, ridiculous bullshit. You noticed, of course, that Zelensky was quite welcome at the private residence of His Majesty King Charles III, who did not object at all to the outfit he was wearing because he's a gentleman. He has a sense of decorum. He understands the situation that Zelensky is in and welcomed him in. In comparison to what we saw from the trap that Donald Trump sprang on Zelensky, I mean, it's obscene. And now Donald Trump is at it again. He has, of course, now paused for review all military aid to Ukraine. Everything is supposed to be stopped. Oh yeah, Biker 2, he completely blows off the First Amendment of the Constitution, which ensures, among other things, the right of the people to peaceably assemble for the redress of grievances. The right of the people to peaceably assemble for the redress of grievances by their government shall not be infringed. So, I mean, for these free speech absolutists, these First Amendment guys, they sure don't know what else the fucking First Amendment says, do they? So, all aid to Ukraine is currently paused. Now, the good news here, the good news is that according to many independent analysts, Ukraine can keep fighting for the foreseeable future. A couple months down the road, long-range strikes for a lack of ATACMS and air defense for a lack of Patriots are going to be a problem. But that is months down the road. Don't be depressed, Mrs. Toad. It is easy to be depressed, right? It is easy to look at this betrayal, to look down at the knife that is jutting out from your heart right now and be depressed. It is easy to be depressed. But let me tell you something. Everybody can do something to help in this war. In the words of Zelensky, in a big war, there are no small acts. Mrs. Toad, I bet you have trees in your front yard, or you have a mailbox, something out there. There is no reason you cannot drape it in gold and blue. Gold and blue, baby. There is no one here that can't do that. And when you do that, you send a message to your neighbors that you are opposed to this administration. And if you send me pictures, I will share them with Ukrainians. I will make videos. I did one for Blue Star because Blue Star wrapped the old oak tree in her front yard in blue and gold. And that is a message of hope. Those messages of hope send ripples of hope out into the world. You never know the impact of people driving by your home you've had from that simple thing to do. My email address is in the bio. If you put up blue and gold in front of your house, send me pictures and I will share them with the world. You want to know what you can do? Do that. At least start with that. And then go from there. Figure out what's next for you. One of the questions that keeps coming in. Al Fakhri, you may be right. There are certainly a lot of economists that agree with you. Let's be positive. In half a year, Russia can't continue anymore. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. The Russian army is on its knees. And they're losing ground. The Russian army. Now you look at the front line, right? The Russian army's slow glacial advance has essentially crawled to a halt. We are seeing the Ukrainians retake positions in Zaporizhia, around Pokrovsk, around Toretsk, today around Chasiv Yar, which has been a contentious, nightmarish hotspot where violent clashes continue. Mel, the U.S. stock market isn't crashing, but it's undergoing some correction, I would say. It's not technically a correction yet, but it looks like we're on our way to a correction. So now, Chasiv Yar today, south of Kupiansk along the Crimea line, Vovchansk, the Russian army is losing positions to Ukraine. This is good news. This is good news for everybody. And increasingly, we are hearing reports that, like in the Tourette's direction, there is no longer any shortage of man pads, right? Those are those shoulder-mounted air defense weapons where you can shoot a plane out of the sky with the missile that comes out of those things, right? Now, we don't know if the Ukrainians suddenly got a bunch of them in, or after the UK announced a new $1.3 billion aid package, including 5,000 new missiles, all of which can be fired from man pads. Maybe with that news, the Ukrainians released their stockpiles. But Russian aviation is increasingly concerned about approaching the front line, while Ukrainian aviation is increasingly providing close ground support to troops on the air support for troops on the ground. The major piece of a combined arms maneuver war that the Ukrainians have not been able to secure up until now. They will sign the deal tonight. I hadn't heard that. Has anybody else heard that? I have not heard that they were going to sign a deal tonight. I don't know anything about that. I find it very unlikely, since Trump is insisting that Zelensky apologize first. And one hopes that that will never happen. The idea that Zelensky should have to apologize is outrageous. Now, Scotty is saying that he heard it on Joey Contino. Is that right? Now, Joey usually knows what's going on. He has nothing to apologize for. I agree. The gentleman has absolutely nothing to apologize for. He acquitted himself well in the face of a really vicious onslaught. Not vicious, because it was too childish to be vicious, you know? entirely too childish to be vicious. Now, look, if the raw minerals deal, if they do sign a deal tonight, be aware it's not a deal. It's a framework. It's barely a framework. Trump is not a details guy. He doesn't have anybody lined up that's going to spend the billions of dollars to come into a country at war to mine rare earths and jeopardize all of their investments because the country is at war with no guarantees of security except me. I'm the guarantee. Anybody who thinks Donald Trump is a guarantee of anything, I got a bridge I want to sell you. I want a bridge I want to sell you. So once this framework for the minerals deal is signed, should it be signed, maybe Trump will resume weapons deliveries. Maybe Trump will even increase weapons deliveries if he doesn't feel he's getting anything out of Putin. All of that remains to be seen. I, for one, think that it is imperative that the Europeans and the Ukrainians act immediately to make the United States irrelevant in any peace negotiation. The great lie that Donald Trump keeps telling us all is that no one can fix it but Trump. No one can fix it but Trump. Only Trump, only... If I was president, this would never have happened. This bullshit, the only way you stop it is to ensure that he has no hand in the defeat of Russia. Because that's what has to happen. All of this bullshit talk about a ceasefire that Putin is never going to agree to anyway. He's just letting the United States beat the shit out of his enemy politically. He knows he's never going to sign a peace deal. None of these peace deals, the details of which are known, are the Russians going to agree to. They've already said they won't. And what they will not agree to, Ukraine must insist upon. Ukraine cannot stop the fighting without security guarantees. It is irrational to ask them to do so. 20 ceasefires were negotiated over 8 years of war here, and Putin broke every one of them. It's an exercise in futility. It's an exercise that doesn't do anything but benefit Vladimir Putin, the aggressor and war criminal, who is the sole object of motivation for this war. Right? It's he that has created it and insists that it continue. Even now, Kyiv is under air alert. I heard some air defense is active. I heard some shooting just before we got on the live here. What is Europe doing about it? Now, Mrs. Toad and everybody else, take heart. Because there are things you can do in this big war. The simplest of which is to decorate your home in blue and yellow. The next thing, if you're an American, is to get on the horn to Congress. Call your senator. Call your representatives. Call them. Leave messages every day expressing your deep concern for the path that America is on in aligning with our oligarch enemies. It is insane. No one who grew up in the Cold War thinks that Russia is our friend. We understand what Russia is. And remember, I just saw Taliban down there. I don't know anything about a call from the Taliban today, but I do know back in 2017, and you can look this up, fact check me on this. But if I remember correctly, it was 2017, maybe 2019. Trump signed a rare earths deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan. How the fuck did that deal work out for you, Donnie? Give me a fucking break. Hey, Jacob Grady, long time no see. So it is not good enough to say you want a ceasefire. It is not good enough to say you want peace. It must be a just and lasting peace that recognizes the aggressor and holds them responsible. This two-sidesing of everything, this seeing the Russians as a good faith partner we can negotiate with, is insanity. It is an irredeemable, grotesque naivete of the worst sort that will in fact get us all killed. It's insanity. Now, for their part, there is clearly a movement inside of the EU that recognizes the real danger that the maggots pose to the world, not just to the United States and Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen has unveiled an EU 800 billion euro security proposal. It proposes, basically what it does is it removes all the barriers to defense spending and creates a fund to help individual states fund their own security and defense spending. This is critical. We are now living in a world, and my friends, I don't believe it's hypothetical. I don't believe I'm overstating the matter when I say that we are now living in a world where all of Donald Trump's masks have been removed, and he has shown himself to the world to be a creature of the Kremlin, of our enemies, hell-bent on the destruction of not just the American economy and the American federal system of government, but on the entire economy of North America, weakening our neighbors, potentially for the absolute insane notion that we might invade them like conquering Vikings. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity of the worst sort. And to kowtow to it, to think that you can talk to Trump, to think that you can kiss the ring and get your way is insane. It is the way that he talked to Zelensky, the way that Vance talked to Zelensky, the way they laughed about his outfit. You know, none of them had a word to say about Elon Musk and his ridiculousness in the Oval Office in a t-shirt with a chainsaw, Ray-Bans, and a MAGA cap. Ridiculous. None of them ever asked Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of the House of Saud, if he owned a fucking suit when he came in dressed in bed sheets. Nobody ever said such a thing to him. It's obscene. Winston Churchill visited FDR at the White House in 1942, dressed in camo, fatigues, olive drab. The mineral deal is an obscenity of neo-colonial, absurdist economic coercion for an ally at their weakest, most critical point. It is a sin and a crime and a shame and a stain on the American soul, the likes of which we haven't seen since the stains left by slavery, the genocide of Native Americans, and our 100-year sense of the treatment of people of color in the United States. It's that kind of a black mark on the soul of America. He was so set up, Gene. For anybody who thinks he wasn't set up, right? Let me ask you this. Was the vice president in the meeting with Starmer? Was the vice president in the meeting with Macron? Do you ever see the vice president and president together? No, you fucking don't. The reason for that is because we keep them separate so that, God forbid, there's an assassination attempt or a terrorist attack, they both don't get killed. We keep them physically apart all the time for your whole life and mine. What was he even doing there? He didn't belong there. Trump did insult his outfit the moment he got out of the car, remember? Meeting him at the door. Oh, that's really, well, look, if they do sign the mineral deal framework, right? Remember, it's just a framework. They have to still evolve the deal. Ukraine can still insist on security guarantees. And who knows how long it'll take to get all those T's crossed and I's dotted. As long as U.S. assistance continues to flow, who cares how long it takes? Or if it even ever gets done, this mineral deal. I'm with you, Al-Fakri. Use that frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. I couldn't agree more. Europe is working on making more weapons. Yes, they are. Security guarantees from America. That's a good one. Might as well sign in with Russia. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. As long as Trump's in the White House, when you deal with the White House, you have to assume you're dealing with the Kremlin. Whether knowingly or unknowingly. I don't think there's really much doubt there, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He is either willingly or unknowingly a pawn of Vladimir Putin and a creature of the Kremlin. He spouts their lies. He repeats their nonsense. He takes their side over the side of our own intelligence community. And all of the goblins and ghouls in his orbit repeat Russian talking points. They are popping champagne corks in the Kremlin. Russia is jubilant. Have you seen the effect, right? Like just the effect of Trump and his bullshit has weakened the US dollar, which has strengthened the ruble. That and the market manipulation of the central bank, the ruble's recovered very nicely these days. Last I saw it was trading at like 89 to the dollar. Russia is giddy with glee because of Trump is their buddy. Yep. Why Canada? China can put tariffs on American products and American cannot? I don't know what you mean by that. It's Trump that started this tariff war. I believe, it is my opinion that he is putting tariffs on Mexico and Canada because he wants to ruin the economy of North America. He doesn't just want to wreck the U.S. economy. He understands enough about the integrated nature of the North American economy that by doing this, he is going to wreck all of those economies. Now, you can sit there and say that's insane. He's Donald Trump. Why would he want to wreck the U.S. economy? Because it gets him lots of benefits. It will get him, let's say, the power to declare martial law if things get bad enough, if protests are in the street for his failures. He wants to create a permanent underclass in the United States. The promise that wealth inequality in the United States would be balanced by a minimum wage that was a living wage and by a 90% upper tax rate to cap how much money people could really make. He wants that all done away with. He wants a permanent underclass where he can buy and sell those people because he has so much more than anyone else does. It's oligarchy. It's the recipe for oligarchy. And we know it is because we know the effects of tariffs. We know what those tariffs are going to do. The other side is going to impose them, and trade is going to come to a screeching halt. What trade does get done, everything is going to be increased. What's the tariff rate to Mexico and Canada? 25%? Your maple syrup goes up 25%. Your oil from the oil sands goes up 25%. Everything goes up 25% that comes from Canada, and that's a lot of shit. I hope you're not planning to build a deck because lumber just got very expensive. Yeah, I remember that tweet. Back in, when was that? Like 2014, 2012? It was before he ran for president anyway, right? He tweeted, it was about Obama. He tweeted something to the effect of, if the Dow drops more than 1,000 points in a day, the president should resign. As if the president is in control of the stock market, which he's not, except to wreck it. There's one place where the president, if he does a bunch of stupid shit, can wreck a winning streak. Two things drive the market, fear and greed. Greed has been driving the market the last 4 years. Now it's time for some fear. And it's coming, boy. Tariffs will destroy the market, and not just the market in the United States, right? Every other nation that we trade with has its own stock market, right? The foreign exchange. We are dealing with Russia now, and that is the big thing that everybody has to come to terms with. Back in 1987, it is alleged, when Donald Trump was first recruited by the KGB, the predecessor to the Russian FSB, he was given a code name of Krasnov, right? So Trump's Russian code name is Krasnov. Now, we know that the Kremlin and the KGB recruited American businessmen on a regular basis. There is lots of evidence tying Mr. Krasnov with the Kremlin and with Russian oligarchs and gangsters from 40 years ago, literally from 40 years ago. So, hey, PH. So, we got to stop kidding ourselves. We got to stop kidding ourselves that anybody is running the White House other than Vladimir Putin, and that the American federal system of government has been subverted by malign foreign powers. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the reality. Because look, everything that Donald Trump does is so confusing until you accept this premise that he's working for Putin. And as soon as you accept that premise, every fucking thing he does makes sense. Does it not? Jacob Grady has taken a pay cut. He wants you poor. He does not want you to make a living wage. He wants cheap labor that he can exploit, like Elon Musk's family had at their emerald mine in South Africa. It's not fear-mongering. This is reality. You can see it. Did you not see the way that Trump treated our ally in the form of Volodymyr Zelensky? I mean, this is not the action of a rational person. This is not the action of a person who believes that democracies are fundamentally superior systems to autocracies. It's just not. Okay, I think, guys, that's it for me on the headline news. We'll go to Q&A. Boy, I had a long day. long couple days, actually. It's a long week, actually. Anyway, whatchamacallit, I want to thank again the sponsor of tonight's live, Arn. Arn, you are the best, man. Without you and Fitz and Ballerina and Bobby and Dan Ballard and, oh God, a bunch of other people. I know, I'm sorry, there's a lot of people now, but you guys especially are the best. Thanks. Thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps group, Jay and Travis, the best moderators on the Tickety Talk. Now, how am I, Hardly? Well, I'll tell you, I'm very excited, actually. Tell me if I should live stream this or not tomorrow. I'm not sure about it. So, I have a new conversational English group starting tomorrow night. It's our first meeting. It's an organizational meeting. I don't know. For all I know, it could be me and two Ukrainians sitting around speaking English. So, I'm not despondent, Steve-O. Not in any way, pal. I'm working harder than ever. I was just telling the guys 2 things this week. Tomorrow, I got a new English-speaking group started, and we have our first organizational meeting tomorrow. And then on Sunday, it is the 1-year anniversary of Laughter is the Best Medicine Kyiv, the little comedy group I have with some Ukrainians, right? And we have a great lineup for Sunday. It's at 6:30 show. We'll live stream the show. It's at 6:30 Sunday Kyiv time. That's 11:30 a.m. Well, it's 4:30 p.m. in London. It's 11:30 a.m. in New York. And that would make it 8:30 a.m. Bobby for you. So it's a very busy week for me. Couldn't be happier. Despite the martial law, the drone attacks, the missile attacks, the air raid sirens, despite all of that, I stand with Ukraine, and I think you should too. It's an easy thing to do. Wrap some yellow and blue around the trees in your front yard and send me pictures. Do I know about the HX-2 drones from Germany? I do not. I don't know anything about that, actually. Oh, no, is this daylight savings time weekend in the U.S.? So wait, it's spring forward, right? So if it was 11:30, it becomes 12:30. So Americans have to add 1 hour to everything I just said, because we don't do daylight savings time for another 2 weeks here. So we're going to be out of sync now. Ugh. I'm as safe as anybody in this country. Russia lost this war a long time ago. Thank you, Fitz. I really appreciate it. Russia lost this war a long time ago. It's a joke. Can Russia win? What were Russia's stated goals in entering Ukraine? To denazify Ukraine, which is bullshit because the only Nazis I've met here are fucking Americans who were disappointed there weren't other Nazis here. That's it. And that's only happened twice in 2 years. But yeah, American Nazis. Can you believe it? It's ridiculous. So denazify Ukraine, demilitarize Ukraine. Well, that did not go as planned, did it? Ukraine is now like a fucking porcupine of Patriot missiles. This country is 1/5 the population of Russia, and they have held them off for 3 years. More than that, they've ejected them from much of the Ukraine that they actually took at the beginning. So it's amazing. With every advantage, Russia can't get west of the Dnipro River. Fuck them. fuck them in the ear for what they have done here. And let's see if we can't get a little justice in the 21st century. Hitler cheated his way out of justice. Wouldn't it be nice if Putin couldn't? If we could get our hands on Putin and put him in the fucking Hague and Donald Trump right next to him as his co-conspirator. So what else were Russia's goals at the beginning? Oh yeah, they didn't want NATO on their border. How'd that work out? Finland and Sweden and 1,800 kilometers of new border with NATO, motherfuckers. And what did they do? They said the whole war was about the expansion of NATO, that they were so afraid of NATO, right? They demilitarized the Finnish border. 800 kilometers of Finnish border. No more air defense systems there. It's all in Ukraine. Well, if the real concern was NATO, why would you demilitarize your new border with NATO? It's because you know that NATO was never the concern. Just a lot of bullshit to justify your genocidal lunacy against the unprovoked nation next door because you think they're not really people there. And you have every right to cull that herd and take what belongs to someone else for yourself because you're a piece of shit. The Russian military is grabbing men off the street to fight in Ukraine because they are having such a hard time replenishing the troops now. I want to say, guys, because there's a lot of videos on the internet, and we saw J.D. Vance repeat this lie the other day. He was talking about Ukrainians grabbing people off the streets. Now, guys, look, I have looked for evidence of this. I know lots of guys who are the right age to serve, right? I cannot find a single example of a person being dragged off the street unless they were wanted for some crime and it was a police action, or they had been served military papers and they hid from them. We call them draft dodgers, and that's illegal in the United States. Muhammad Ali went to jail for it, if you recall. So this idea that Ukraine is doing what we know Russia is doing, like every other lie that Russia tells, it wants other people to commit the crimes that it commits so that people think those crimes are normal. Those crimes are not normal. We cannot let Trump convince us that his open corruption, his wholesale sellout of America to our enemies is in any way normal. No fucking way. You know, it's funny, hardly, according to Ukrainian doctors, they have not had a single case of bone spurs in this country. Yeah, Chris, it made us all sick. Yeah, Buck, that's what I'm saying, pal. You know, you guys get... So over here, I get the original published on Telegram, right? And so many times, those videos that you're seeing that are labeled Ukrainian men dragged off the street to go fight in Ukraine, you trace them back here. They're originally published on the National Police website because the people in the video are not draft dodgers. They're not being taken into the military. They're fucking criminals with warrants out for them. And the Russian propaganda machine churns those police videos. Bad boys, what you gonna do? Churns them out as fodder for the credulous in America. Like idiots like J.D. Vance, who have never been to Ukraine, have never talked to Ukrainians, have never been here to know what this country's problems are. and yet act as if they do because they got suckered by a lie told in a YouTube video. Now, guys, I'll tell you, again, I want to stress to everybody, I have looked for evidence of this. There is not a single one of these videos that I have not been able to debunk to the original source. And it's always a draft dodger or somebody with a warrant out because they're wanted for some crime. I have yet to find a single valid one. I have yet to talk to a single Ukrainian that knows anybody that this has happened to. So it's, as far as I can tell, it's nonsense. Nonsense. Chris, I do think that not just Zelensky, but Zelensky and Europe will refuse any bad deal that the US and Russia make without Ukraine's input. Krager, it's hard for me to say what the mood is really like here. I don't speak the language. Therefore, the only people I speak to speak English. That's a small subset of Ukrainian society. It's very hard for me to say. Now, after this weekend, because I'm going to be out talking to people all week, after this weekend, I might be able to give a better view of that. But right now, I wouldn't presume to say. Some of my friends have expressed a deep sense of betrayal by the Trump administration over this. And that's particularly true when they see the USAID programs that provided so many cross-cultural, artistic pollination opportunities, right? Opportunities for American artists to display their work in Kyiv, Ukrainian artists to display their work in DC, English language groups, American movie nights, all kinds of cross-cultural stuff that has just stopped. Like a whole English language ecosystem just turned off. And it's so important to the future of Ukrainians as they continually face more and more to the West. English and a mastery of English for these folks will mean greater opportunities, unprecedented opportunities for them in the EU. So seeing that under stress the way that it is right now is hard, and people are hurt about it. But one thing I will say is that there are very few Ukrainians who are bad-mouthing America. They understand the distinction between the Trump administration and the American people. And the more homes, American homes, and European homes too, draped and bedazzled in gold and blue, the happier it will make them. So please, if you don't do anything else for this war, but watch this channel and put up some yellow and blue and send me some pictures. That's a thing. That's a thing you did. And you don't have any idea what it will mean to people. Well, Spencer, darling, I think you're right. I do rather think that some good is coming out of this. I think the Europeans are, and this is not my thinking, right? I want to stress this is thoughts of real people that know real things that I'm just repeating. But there were a lot of analysts before the election that I ignored because I was certain that Trump could not win. I was just certain of it. Once the American people reject you, you don't generally get a second chance. So I was wrong about that, and I didn't pay as much attention to these guys as I should have. Because at the time, back then, they were talking about the rise of European power should Donald Trump win the 2024 election. And those guys that made those predictions, it looks like they're spot on. That Europe is waking up to the reality that it cannot depend on the United States for its security any longer. And it is time for Europe to stand up and take responsibility for its own security. This could, in the near term, create a diapoled world of Europe and Ukraine against Washington and Moscow. Not an alliance I ever thought I would see, I must confess. It must be about 1 o'clock, right? Ooh, right on the money. Okay. So guys, another time I will tell you the story of how a 17-year-old Peter went to the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C., and interviewed an information officer for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yeah, I've been interested in Russia my whole life and afraid of it for much of it, especially as a kid. All right. So guys, again, big thanks to Arn, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Everybody that stands with Ukraine, you are the best. You're paying attention. You know what's going on. Take those pictures, send them to me. This program is live Monday through Friday Eastern Time at 5 o'clock, the live at 5. That's going to vary now with daylight savings time coming up, guys. I'll make a video, I guess, about the schedule. I want to thank Arn, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. You know, I had to pay the rent today, and utilities are coming up. And it is guys like Arn and Fitz and Thor and tomorrow night, it's Cynthia Beatricella will be our sponsor tomorrow night. And Little Red Sunflower, with all you guys, that this channel could not exist. So I'm deeply appreciative. It looks like we've got sponsors for all week now. So if anybody is interested in a live sponsorship for next week, the PayPal is in the description. So for everybody who makes it possible, thank you. And especially, of course, Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group, and Jay and Travis, the best moderators on the Tickety Talk. Guys, if you don't have a Patreon account, you can have a free one. Just go and sign up for a free one, and you'll get to see almost all of the Patreon content I create. And even better, if you can afford to kick me $5 a month, please join the Patreon. It really is my bread and butter. It's how I know I can afford to keep doing this. So please join the Patreon. Plus, there's a bunch of good stuff coming out on Patreon you're going to want to see. I think the world, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but as I'm working through it, the world is making more and more sense to me after many, many years of it not making any fucking sense at all. So, join me over on the Patreon. Yep. Do something about it. Decorate your house in blue and gold and send me the pics. The Ukrainians will appreciate it. All right, kids. Make it a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow.